Hey guys, it's your girl Michelle. This weekend we're making tomato basil bread. I love this bread from Panera and I get it every time I go there. What's very interesting about this recipe is that it has this cinnamon sugar crust on top. You would think that's weird with the tomato basil, but it actually works out great. The acidity and savoriness of the tomato basil and the sweetness of the cinnamon sugar balances out. Without further ado, let's get started.
Here is a list of ingredients you will need for this tomato basil bread. For the Poolish, you will need 50 grams of water, pinch of active dry yeast, 50 grams of bread flour. For the tomato basil sauce, you will need 1 head of garlic, we're going to roast it, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 2 tablespoons of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of oil, 3 tablespoons of tomato paste, 3 to 4 sprigs of basil. For the dough, you will need 400 grams of bread flour, 1 teaspoon of malted barley flour, this is optional, 2 1/4 teaspoon or 1 packet of active dry yeast, 200 grams of cold water. For the cinnamon sugar topping, you're going to need 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of honey, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of oil. We're first going to start off by making the Poolish the night before. In a small bowl or measuring cup, add 50 grams of water, pinch of active dry yeast, 50 grams of bread flour. Give it a stir. Cover and let it rest at room temperature overnight or up to 15 hours. Next day, we're going to roast a head of garlic and let it cool. Split a garlic head in half, drizzle olive oil, and sprinkle a pinch of salt. Wrap it in foil and bake it for 25 to 30 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. While the garlic cools, let's make the tomato basil sauce. In a food processor, add 1 tablespoon of sugar, 2 tablespoons of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of oil, 3 tablespoons of tomato paste, the garlic we roasted, 3 to 4 sprigs of basil. Run the food processor until the sauce comes together. It's okay to have big chunks of basil. I think it makes the bread taste better. Now let's go ahead and make the dough. In a stand mixer bowl, add 400 grams of bread flour, 1 teaspoon of malted barley flour, this is optional, 2 1/4 teaspoons or 1 packet of active dry yeast. Give it a stir. While the mixer is running on low, add 200 grams of cold water. Mix on low for 2 to 3 minutes or until the ingredients are somewhat incorporated. Scrape the sides of the bowl down. Add the Poolish and tomato basil sauce. Mix on low-medium speed for 5 to 7 minutes. Scrape down the bowl again and mix on medium for 5 to 7 minutes or until the dough wraps around the dough hook and slaps against the bowl. Cover and let it rest for 1.5 to 2 hours or doubled in size. Now let me show you how to make this bread by hand. Go ahead and fast forward to the pre-shaping chapter if you prefer to use an electric mixer. To a bowl, add 400 grams of bread flour, 1 teaspoon of malted barley flour, this is optional, 2 1/4 teaspoon or 1 packet of active dry yeast. Give it a stir. Add 200 grams of water, room temperature, the Poolish, tomato sauce, and mix together. Cover and let the dough rest for 10 minutes. We will need to incorporate a total of 3 folds. Pull a piece of the dough and fold over. Turn the bowl and repeat until the dough tightens. Cover and let it rest for 30 minutes. You're going to repeat this 2 more times. After the last fold, the dough will rest for 1 hour. After your dough has rested, we're going to pre-shape it. Place your dough on a lightly floured surface. Flour the dough. This is a sticky dough and you can use more flour if it's too difficult to handle. Divide the dough in 2. Shape into balls. Use a bench scraper to assist. Cover and let the dough rest for 15 minutes. Oil 1 9 by 5 inch loaf pan. Flip the dough over so the smooth side is facing down. Shape into a rectangle. The length should be about the same size as your loaf pan. Roll the dough like a cinnamon roll or jelly roll. Pinch the ends closed. Place the rolled dough into the loaf pan. Repeat with the other dough. Cover and let the dough rest for 1 hour or until they are slightly puffed out of the loaf pan. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I placed a pan full of hot water to create moisture in the oven. Bake for 25 minutes. While the bread is baking, let's make the cinnamon sugar topping. This is optional. Into a small bowl, add 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of honey. I'm just gonna eyeball this. Pinch of salt, 1 tablespoon of oil. Give the ingredients a stir. After the bread has baked for 25 minutes, rub the topping on the top. Place the bread back in the oven and bake for an additional 10 to 15 minutes or until the internal temperature reaches 190 degrees Fahrenheit. If you don't want the toppings, then just bake the bread for a total of 35 to 40 minutes or until the internal temperature reaches 190 degrees Fahrenheit.
I toasted a little bit, so I like the outside a little bit crunchy. So much flavor. That is so good. I can't wait to make sandwiches with these. If the cinnamon sugar is not your thing, you could definitely leave it out. It's still delicious. That's all the time we have for today. Until next weekend. Bye.